Centuries before making the legendary film The Last Duel, a film in which nobody saw, Ridley Scott made his first film, The Duellists, a film nobody saw. Here is an excerpt from our podcast First Film, where we discuss the movie. Okay, so Baden, listen.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna start it off by saying I was totally expecting something completely different going into this film. I'm not really familiar with Ridley with his historical dramas.
Sorry, you didn't see 2010's Robin Hood?
No.
The most historically accurate film of all time?
Yeah, the adaptation of the Disney one, the cartoon animals.
The fox, the sexy fox.
I thought this was gonna be like Princess Bride or like a Zorro type film.
Oh, so like kind of light, kind of comedic?
Fantastical.
Okay.
Fantastical.
Definitely not that.
So where do we start?
Why don't we start off by just really succinctly summing up this bloody movie?
Yeah.
The Duelist is a movie where essentially two French military men, Ferrot and Dubert, get into a feud that ends up spanning several decades of their career as they procedurally try to kill each other in duels with increasingly deadly weapons.
Yes.
Until one of them has to perish. That's about it. It's just duels and in-between stuff, basically.
And somehow it's an hour and 50 minutes.
Yeah, and I'll just get my general thought out of the way. I really liked it.
Okay.
I thought it was great. What did you think?
Okay, I'm so mixed about this one because when I first watched it, I kind of didn't really like it.
Interesting.
Because I don't really like the main character. I thought he was just kind of like a whiny son of a bitch.
Oh my god.
And I thought like Harvey Keitel's character, like how he was just like this one guy, like this psychopathic dude who's just,
he just keeps getting promoted too.
Yeah, I know. And I was just like, I want to see it from his perspective, like this kind of psychopathic
this
guy.
insane, like unstoppable menace.
But then I started doing my research,
Yeah.
and I've kind of come around to the film.
First of all, shot beautifully.
Yeah.
It is a gorgeous film.
It seems very high budget for what it is.
Yeah, like it looks pretty high budget. It's a historical set in sort of like the 1800s.
Yeah, so Ferrot is a kind of lower class, and Dubert is an upper aristocrat. And I wrote here, I can't tell if this film is supposed to be funny or not, okay?
Yeah.
There was some dialogue that felt like an Edgar Wright kind of setup where like it was setting up to something comedic, but there was just no punchline.
Definitely. I think like Dubert's dialogue in particular was very like quippy.
Yeah.
It was really quippy. If he felt like he was coming out of a Marvel film or something, right? Like it's a very serious like historical French thing and he's there like, are we really doing this now? Shan't I get my pantaloons on first?
I didn't like his voice.
That was another funny thing. Like in the film, they're French and they do like have British people in the film.
Yeah.
No difference in the way
There's
they talk.
no difference.
They made zero attempts to like make the dialogue sound different or anything. Obviously they weren't going to speak French, but there's not even a slight attempt.
No.
They might as well be English.
Yeah, apparently he did like a mid-Atlantic accent. I didn't hear it at all.
Any ground is suitable for that.
It just sounded annoying. You know what I did like?
What did you like?
The front ponytails on fucking Ferrot.
The braids?
Yes, the fucking front braids.
Yeah, I know.
Incredible. There's a point about halfway through the movie where he stops doing them.
Yeah.
And I was mourning their death. Towards the end of the film, he starts wearing them again. Fantastic stuff.
I mean, hey man, you just spoiled the plot of the film.
It's actually all about hair. It's like The Devil Wears Prada.
I thought Dehubert looked like one of the McPoyles from In Always Sunny. He looked exactly like one of them.
He has a very greasy stash.
The
that's for
mustache.
sure.
It's the mustache.
Yeah, so the film kind of kicks off when Ferrot, who seems to be very interested in killing people, stabs the mayor's nephew, and then he just kind of like goes home. And so Dubert is told to go and like find him because obviously the mayor is pissed.
Yeah.
And he finds Ferrot, and Ferrot's like, what did I do? What do you think you did? You stabbed the mayor's nephew.
That's why I thought it was like comedic. He was so dramatic too. He was like, "You've insulted me!"
Right? Ferrot immediately sword drawn.
He's addicted to dueling.
He has a
The
problem.
point of the film is he's addicted to dueling.
He actually is. Like, the second Dubert says anything to him, he's like, sword out. He's like, you've insulted me. We're doing this. And Dubert's like, are you fucking serious right now? But yeah, like, they just got into a fight, like, immediately. And let me tell you, Farrow fights pelvis first. He moves like a man with jowls.
He gyrates the hips.
It's so crazy.
One of my favorite lines of dialogue, I wrote it down because I laughed so hard, was "caught the mange in Italy. Poor bitch." I was like, what?
It's crazy. So yeah, the first fight, Dubert, he wins. He cuts up Farrow's face, right? And then he gets tackled by like a woman.
Yeah, what was that?
I don't know, but she tackles him really hard and like scratches his face.
Full to the ground.
Full to the ground. He disappears out of frame. This movie could have been a comedy.
It could have been.
Because the tackle was really funny.
I thought Farrow was hilarious. I thought he was
so
really
good.
funny.
I think it would have been really funny if Farrow was like dead serious and then he just had these like lackeys who were really tired of his shit. But everyone was really supportive of him.
I really enjoyed this film from a comedic standpoint.
I did. I will say also, early in the movie after that, there is a surgeon who seems to be living with Dubert. He looks like Brian May of Queen.
Yeah.
It's spot on. And he sort of outlines the main thing in the film in like a very succinct way. He's sort of a philosopher.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said is that obviously Farrow is going to come after Dubert.
Yes.
And he says there are only a few ways that you can avoid death. You either stay a higher rank than him, because then he can't duel you. I think it was you stay physically far away from him.
Yeah.
Or
you die.
Well, yeah, it was something like that. But I thought that was like a good, succinct way of sort of explaining some of the stakes.
Yeah, because basically Farrow's motivation is that he's jealous of the high-ranking aristocratic stature of Dubert, and he kind of just wants to get at it, and because he doesn't really like authority figures.
And yeah, that's especially how it starts. And later on, it sort of just becomes a matter of honor because their duels keep getting like interrupted. And so Farrow, like, his honor is insulted until one of them is dead.
The third duel.
That's the one in like, they're in like a weird underground thing, right?
I think so. One, I love how whenever they fight, there's like that recurring theme of like, it's this mischievous music. I love it so much.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, this duel starts out with one of them like sneezing, but then later in the film, he sneezes in the
he's
bathtub.
Wounded, yeah.
And she's like, don't sneeze, describe honor. And he's like, it's indescribable.
And then he sneezes.
And then he sneezes and he's like, my rib! I was like, this has to be comedic.
Again, it so easily could have been if it was just played up a little bit more. One of the things I did like in the film is how they sort of escalated the duels, though.
Yeah.
Like, each time it gets crazier. It starts off with fencing swords.
Yes.
Then they move up to slashing, like, sabers.
Then they get to horseback.
And then later pistols.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought that was really, really cool, actually.
I'm surprised they graduated ranks because they keep just getting their asses kicked.
For sure. These dudes keep getting promoted until they're, like, very high ranking.
And they get warned by, like, 3 different people. They're like, oh, you better stop your dueling.
Yeah, and then, so I'm promoting you. It's like, very confusing. There is a romance in it. There's a woman named Adele. She sleeps with him while engaged to another guy.
Right.
They end up getting married later. I thought it was pretty good. I think they had chemistry.
I think they were actually dating on set.
Really?
I think so.
Okay, well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But as it goes on, there are just more and more people basically saying, like, is your honor really this important? Which I thought was really interesting because the final duel, 2 of Farrow's men approach him on his premises.
Yeah.
Right, in a field by his house and are like, we have to settle this, and goes out to have his last duel with Farrow.
Which is crazy.
And he doesn't tell his wife. They have a kid on the way.
He could have
or at
literally
that point,
died.
they might even already have kids.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't tell them. I don't know. I think the representation of, like, honor in this film is pretty interesting.
One of them literally comments, I think it's Dubert's wife, says, like, nothing cures a duelist.
Yes, it's a problem.
They're, like, literally talking about them like they're addicts.
Yeah, and it's accurate, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because even though Harvey Keitel's Farrow is obviously the villain, and he's a great villain.
Yeah, he's really good.
He feels like a beast, like
Yeah.
an unstoppable force, because obviously every battle they get wounded and the duel kind of has to end prematurely.
Yeah.
And every time Farrow just comes back stronger.
Yeah.
While Dubert, like towards the end, during the final duel, he has like a gimp leg.
And it's crazy too, because Farrow's like actually having fun dueling.
Yeah, it's interesting because even though Dubert is avoiding the duels,
Yes.
he sort of isn't at the same time.
There becomes a point where he just kind of accepts it.
Yeah, and he puts it above everything else because he's an addict, I think.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of cool because I'm only sort of rooting for him. I'm rooting for him like because Thoreau is worse.
I was rooting for Thoreau.
You were rooting for Thoreau?
I was. But no,
Yeah.
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, like he's not a hero or anything.
No.
They're both trapped in this honor cycle.
Do you remember after they're fighting the Kozak?
Yeah.
And Armand tries to show camaraderie, like
Yeah.
by offering him like a flask, and Thoreau just like literally he turns around and just leaves, walks through the cold by himself.
Yeah, I mean, they're on the same side, right? They're in the same army and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And even if they were to be dueling, like they could at least be sportsmanlike with each other and you know, no one says that they have to be disrespectful to each other outside of it.
But then it gets crazier because they start spreading like rumors.
Yes, and that's something I thought was really cool because specifically Dubert, one of the things he says early on is like, I'm not going to talk badly about a man who I'm feuding with.
Yep.
Sir, I cannot fight the man 3 times and then tell tales on him.
But then as soon as Thoreau is like, oh, he doesn't actually like Napoleon, he hates him.
Yeah,
Right?
it just becomes a war of lies.
Yeah.
Which is kind of dishonorable. And I think that's an interesting point is like, they are honorable, but at a certain point, is it even about honor or is it about pride?
Yeah, because I think the pride becomes so great because I want to say 3/4 of the film, Thoreau is set to be executed.
Yes.
And Dubert literally comes in and requests them to be like, no, let him out under my orders.
Exactly.
Only because he doesn't want the dueling to stop.
Yeah. And he claims it's in the name of honor. But again, like, if Thoreau is on the chopping block and was ordered that way by, like, superior officers, doesn't that override it?
Yeah.
But no, at a certain point, the honor is kind of gone and it becomes about pride and ego, I think.
It's so funny too, because by the end of the film, they've kind of swapped places. Like Thoreau, literally the only thing he has in his life is the duel.
Yeah.
And Dubert, he has a wife, he has kids, he has like noble status, I'm pretty sure. But again, he's still not satisfied.
It's interesting. What did you think of the ending?
I thought the final duel was a bit anticlimactic.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the tension. I think it does do tension very well.
Right.
I'll say this though. You know when they basically have these pistols that only have a bullet each.
Yes.
And so the duel ends when one person has fired both shots and the
Yeah.
other person hasn't, right? And so Thoreau used both of his shots and Dubert still had one left.
Yeah.
It just means he wins. Like he could shoot Thoreau right there. And he sort of stands up and he's pointing the gun at
Thoreau.
And then we cut back to him at home with his wife.
Yeah.
I thought they weren't going to tell us whether he shot Thoreau or not. I think that would have been stronger. I don't know how the book ends. I don't know how any of the real stuff ended. So, like, maybe this was, I don't know, not a Ridley Scott choice. But I don't know. I think the film would have been really interesting if it had an ambiguous ending.
I agree.
What if we end, you know, Dubert's pointing his gun at Thoreau. Thoreau's like, kill me. And then we cut to him back at home with his wife. And she's like, what's wrong? And he's like, you know, nothing. And he seems really cheery and, like, relaxed, right?
Yes.
But we don't know. Did he point blank execute Thoreau or did he let him go or something? But they do tell us. They tell him that he like basically said, I own your life now. Get out of here. I never want to see you again. I'm better than this honor or whatever. I think it would have been interesting, ambiguous.
I agree.
Yeah, but visually amazing. The locations are great. The duels are very well choreographed.
Okay, the cavalry duel. Do you know that one part where it's like cutting between him
Yes.
and like going back and forth and
Yes.
the audio's cutting back? That was so funny.
That was a bit rough, yeah. Because it wasn't just cutting to flashbacks. It was cutting to like... Yeah.
It was so weird.
At one point, it cuts to his wife going, kill. It didn't have the intended effect.
I also thought it kind of ruined the stakes too.
Yeah, because it's this great shot of him sitting on his horse and he's terrified.
Yeah, and I understand it's probably like, oh, it's supposed to be jarring, but like, I don't know, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah. I just don't think the cuts work the way they were intended. I see what he was trying to do. I just don't think it works great. But yeah, I mean, it's a good film. I think there is stuff you can see in this film that comes up in his later films too.
I agree.
So I think that's very interesting. I liked it.
Aiden, how would you rate this film if you were Thoreau and on a psychopathic dueling rage? How many duels?
How many front pigtails?
How many front
would I
pigtails?
rate this out of 2?
2.
I'd give it 2 out of 2 front pigtails. It's pretty good, and I have never heard of it before. I wonder which film has been seen by more people, Piranha 2 or this film.
I wonder.
It's definitely this film. Maybe.
Well, why don't we talk about that
Yeah,
now,
why don't we
Aiden?
get into the behind the scenes? I'm very curious.
Or as I like to call it, behind the duel.
fight on a set,